Keynote 1, understand what shame really is. Shame is a complex, deeply ingrained emotion that shapes how we view ourselves and our place in the world. To understand shame, we have to recognize how it's different from other emotions, especially those that often gets confused with like guilt or embarrassment. This distinction is crucial because shame attacks who we are, not simply what we do. While guilt tells us, I made a mistake, shame whispers, I am a mistake. Guilt is often about behavior, something we can correct or improve. It's that feeling we get when we do something that goes against our values or harms others, and it motivates us to make things right. Guilt, in this way, can be healthy and constructive. It helps us stay accountable to our values. But shame, in contrast, hits at our sense of self-worth. It doesn't say you did something bad, it says you are bad. This is what makes shame so toxic and destructive. Shame often arises when we feel we haven't met certain standards, whether those standards are set by ourselves, our family, society, or even cultural expectations. These standards can be about anything: success, appearance, intelligence, or relationships. When we don't measure up, shame can trigger a belief that we're fundamentally flawed and unworthy of acceptance, love, or belonging. The origins of shame are often rooted in early experiences, times when we felt we didn't belong, were harshly criticized, or experienced rejection. As children, we internalize these moments deeply, and over time, they create shame-based narratives about ourselves. Phrases like, I'm not good enough, I don't belong, or I'm not lovable get replayed in our minds, reinforcing that shame-based identity. These beliefs often follow us into adulthood, shaping how we interact with others, approach challenges, and view our worth. Listening to shame then begins with recognizing it. Shame thrives on secrecy and silence. The less we acknowledge it, the more power it has over us. But when we take a step back and say, that voice telling me I'm not enough, that's shame talking, we start to reclaim our power. We begin to see that shame is a feeling, not a fact. Just because we feel unworthy doesn't mean we are unworthy. When we understand shame, we also start to notice its impact on our relationships and how it manifests in our behaviors. Often, shame leads us to either withdraw or overcompensate. We may avoid situations where we feel vulnerable, isolate ourselves, or seek perfectionism to prove our worth. But these are all shame defenses, ways we try to hide our perceived flaws. In understanding shame, we don't need to get rid of it completely. It's a human experience that all of us face. Instead, we need to bring awareness to it and understand how it operates in our lives. This awareness allows us to challenge shame's messages and ultimately choose new, healthier beliefs about who we are. So let's start by naming it, talking about it, and seeing it for what it truly is: a response, not a truth. When we understand what shame is, we gain the clarity to move beyond it, empowering ourselves to live more fully, authentically, and confidently. Keynote 2, break the silence. Shame is an emotion that thrives in secrecy and silence. When we hide our experiences or avoid talking about our struggles, shame grows stronger. It tells us that if others knew about our flaws or mistakes, they'd reject us, and so we hold it in. This silence, however, only deepens shame's grip, isolating us further and reinforcing the false belief that we are alone in our struggles. Breaking the silence is a powerful step in confronting shame because shame loses its hold when it's spoken out loud. When we share our experiences and feelings with others, we begin to see that shame isn't a unique flaw in us, it's a universal human experience. Everyone faces shame in one way or another, but because it's often kept hidden, we don't see the commonality. By speaking up, we bring shame into the open, where it can be seen for what it is: an emotion, not an identity. Sharing our shame requires courage and trust. The thought of letting others see the parts of ourselves that we've hidden away can feel terrifying. But we don't have to share everything with everyone. Choosing trusted people who will listen without judgment is key. It's about finding safe spaces, friends, family members, therapists, or support groups where we can express ourselves openly without fear of rejection or ridicule. When we open up, we often discover that others can relate. They might say, I felt the same way, or you're not alone. This is the magic of breaking the silence. By speaking about our shame, we realize we're not isolated, flawed, or unworthy. We see that others have similar struggles and that they still love and accept us. This shared humanity is incredibly healing, as it helps dismantle the belief that shame keeps telling us that we are less than or unworthy of connection. Breaking the silence also allows us to take control of our narrative. When we hide our shame, we let it define our story, but when we speak up, we reclaim that story. We shift from being silent sufferers to courageous storytellers. Instead of letting shame speak for us, we speak for ourselves, deciding how we want to share our experiences and what meaning we draw from them. It's important to recognize that breaking the silence isn't a one-time fix. Shame may still show up, but each time we share, it gets easier. Each act of openness chips away at shame's power, replacing secrecy with connection and judgment with empathy. We begin to build a resilience to shame that strengthens over time. In breaking the silence, we make room for something beautiful, compassion. We learn that we don't have to face our struggles alone. We see that shame isn't an insurmountable barrier, it's a bridge to connection, understanding, and healing. And as we continue to share, we inspire others to do the same, creating a culture where shame has less power and where openness, empathy, and self-acceptance can flourish. So let's take that step, that leap of vulnerability, and break the silence. It's a choice to show up, to be seen, and to create space for authentic connection. It's a choice that frees us from shame's hold and reminds us that we are worthy of love and belonging, just as we are. Keynote 3, embrace vulnerability. If we want to heal from shame, we must learn to embrace vulnerability. Vulnerability is often misunderstood as weakness, but in reality, it's the greatest measure of courage. It's the willingness to show up, to let our authentic selves be seen, even when there are no guarantees of acceptance. Vulnerability means allowing ourselves to be open, honest, and exposed, and it's essential for dismantling shame's hold over us. Shame makes us feel that if people saw the real us, our fears, insecurities, mistakes, they'd turn away. So, to protect ourselves, we build up defenses, we put on masks, hide our struggles, and keep our true selves under wraps. But these defenses actually reinforce shame's message that who we are isn't good enough. We start to believe that the person we're hiding must truly be unlovable. The result, we become disconnected from others and, perhaps most painfully, from ourselves. Embracing vulnerability is about tearing down these walls, however slowly and carefully. It's choosing authenticity over image and connection over isolation. When we show up as we are without the masks, without pretending, we give ourselves permission to be human. We let others see us fully, and in doing so, we allow ourselves to be loved and accepted for our true selves. This acceptance is crucial in healing shame because it reminds us that we don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love. It's also important to recognize that vulnerability is a practice. It's not something we achieve once and for all, but rather something we choose again and again. It might feel terrifying the first few times, and that's okay. Vulnerability isn't about being fearless, it's about feeling the fear and showing up anyway. Each time we choose to be vulnerable, we build our resilience, our capacity to face shame, and our belief in our own worthiness. Practicing vulnerability can take many forms. It might mean having a difficult conversation where we express our feelings, even if we're unsure how they'll be received. It might look like sharing a personal struggle with a friend or family member, or even admitting when we don't have all the answers. Vulnerability might also mean asking for help when we needed a powerful act that many of us avoid out of fear of seeming weak or needy. But asking for support is one of the most courageous ways to embrace vulnerability and challenge shame. A big part of embracing vulnerability is learning to let go of perfectionism. Shame often fuels a belief that if we can just be perfect enough, then we'll be safe from rejection, judgment, or failure. But perfectionism is a trap that keeps us in hiding. It pushes us to constantly prove our worth and denies us the joy of being accepted as we are. Embracing vulnerability means allowing ourselves to be imperfect, to make mistakes, and to grow through them rather than hide from them. It's about accepting that we are already enough, flaws and all. When we embrace vulnerability, we also create opportunities for deeper connection with others. Vulnerability is the foundation of trust and intimacy. When we're open about our struggles, it invites others to be open about theirs, creating a safe space where everyone can be their authentic selves. This mutual openness fosters genuine connection and reinforces the message that we are not alone in our experiences. We discover that we're all in this together, navigating life's ups and downs. Embracing vulnerability requires self-compassion. We must be kind to ourselves in the process, understanding that it's normal to feel scared, hesitant, or even embarrassed. Vulnerability isn't a flawless journey, it's messy, raw, and real. But through self-compassion, we can learn to accept ourselves and even celebrate our courage in showing up as we are. In the end, vulnerability is about giving ourselves permission to be real, to let go of who we think we should be, and to embrace who we are. It's about choosing love, connection, and growth over shame, isolation, and fear. And while embracing vulnerability won't make shame disappear entirely, it will give us the strength to face it, speak our truth, and live more fully, authentically, and joyfully. So let's embrace vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as our greatest strength, a reminder that we are human, worthy, and beautifully enough, just as we are. When shame tells us we're unworthy, cultivating self-compassion reminds us that we are worthy, flaws and all. Shame creates a harsh inner critic, a voice that constantly points out our mistakes, shortcomings, insecurities. Self-compassion is the antidote to this voice. It allows us to meet ourselves with kindness instead of judgment, support instead of criticism, and understanding instead of rejection. Self-compassion means treating ourselves as we would a close friend. Imagine if a friend came to you feeling down about a mistake they'd made or a failure they'd experienced. Chances are you'd respond with empathy and encouragement, not harsh criticism. Yet when it comes to ourselves, we're often far less forgiving. We tend to hold ourselves to unrealistic standards and beat ourselves up when we fall short. Self-compassion invites us to offer that same empathy and patience to ourselves, remembering that we too are human. Self-compassion isn't about letting ourselves off the hook or avoiding responsibility. Rather, it's about approaching our struggles with a sense of acceptance and understanding. When we make a mistake, self-compassion allows us to acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward without getting trapped in shame. It shifts our mindset from I am flawed to I am human, and mistakes are part of growth. This shift is powerful because it frees us from the grip of shame and enables us to view setbacks as opportunities rather than defining moments. Practicing self-compassion requires us to be mindful of our inner dialogue. Many of us don't realize how frequently we engage in self-criticism, but these small negative thoughts add up, reinforcing shame over time. Self-compassion invites us to pause and notice when we're being hard on ourselves. Instead of saying, I'm such a failure, we can choose to say, I had a tough moment, but I'm doing my best, and I can learn from this. It's a simple shift, but it can transform how we see ourselves and our worth. Another key element of self-compassion is understanding our common humanity. Shame often makes us feel isolated, as though we're the only ones facing a particular struggle or feeling a certain way. Self-compassion reminds us that everyone experiences hardship, failure, and imperfection. When we realize that others share these experiences, it becomes easier to be gentle with ourselves. We see that struggle is not a sign of weakness, it's part of being human. This shared humanity connects us to others, easing the feelings of isolation that shame can create. Self-compassion also includes taking care of our emotional needs. When we're feeling low, stressed, or insecure, we can practice self-care, setting boundaries, and nurturing activities that restore our well-being. Self-compassion allows us to say, it's okay to rest, it's okay to take a break, or it's okay to reach out for support. This care can take many forms: spending time with loved ones, practicing mindfulness, engaging in hobbies, or seeking help from a therapist. By tending to our needs, we counteract shame's narrative that we don't deserve care, or kindness. Shame often convinces us that we need to be perfect to be worthy of love, success, or belonging. It tells us that if we don't measure up in every way, we somehow fall short. But perfection is an impossible standard. Striving for it only fuels shame and leaves us feeling exhausted, inadequate, and disconnected from who we truly are. Embracing imperfection, on the other hand, is about choosing authenticity over perfection and accepting ourselves as enough, just as we are. When we embrace imperfection, we acknowledge that mistakes and shortcomings are part of being human. No one is flawless, and expecting perfection only creates a cycle of shame and self-criticism. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we free ourselves from the pressure to always get it right and make space for growth, resilience, and self-acceptance. We begin to see that our imperfections are not flaws to be hidden, but are in fact opportunities to learn, grow, and connect with others on a more genuine level. Perfectionism can often make us feel like we're walking on a tightrope, always afraid of making a wrong move. It convinces us that our worth is based on our achievements, appearance, or how well we meet certain standards. But in reality, perfectionism keeps us isolated, robbing us of the joy that comes from being fully present and real. Embracing imperfection, on the other hand, means stepping off that tightrope and allowing ourselves to be messy, real, and unapologetically human. It means finding beauty and value in our vulnerabilities and seeing them as a source of connection rather than shame. When we let go of perfectionism, we stop defining ourselves by unrealistic expectations and start celebrating our progress instead. We become more compassionate with ourselves, recognizing that growth doesn't require flawlessness, but rather a willingness to try, fail, and try again. Every misstep becomes an opportunity to learn, not a reason to feel inadequate. This mindset shift from I must be perfect to I am enough liberates us from shame's grip and allows us to approach life with curiosity, openness, and resilience. Embracing imperfection is also crucial for building strong, authentic relationships. When we show up as our true selves, flaws, fears, and all, we create space for others to do the same. People are drawn to authenticity, and when we let down our guard, we invite others to connect with us more deeply. By embracing our imperfections, we model for others that they, too, don't have to be perfect to be worthy of acceptance and love. This vulnerability fosters trust, empathy, and a sense of belonging. Accepting our imperfections also helps us break free from comparison. We live in a culture that constantly encourages us to compare ourselves to others, whether it's through social media, work, or relationships. But comparison is the thief of joy, and it reinforces the idea that we're not good enough as we are. When we embrace our imperfections, we stop measuring our worth against external standards and start appreciating our unique strengths, experiences, and qualities. We realize that our value isn't based on being better than anyone else, but on being true to ourselves. Learning to embrace imperfection doesn't mean we give up on growth or self-improvement. It's about recognizing that growth doesn't require us to be perfect. It requires us to be willing to show up, learn, and evolve. Embracing imperfection allows us to make space for mistakes and to view challenges as part of the journey. It means seeing failure not as a reflection of our worth, but as a natural, valuable part of the process. Practicing self-compassion is essential in embracing imperfection. It means treating ourselves with the same kindness and patience we would offer a friend who's struggling. When we're kind to ourselves, we're more likely to take risks, try new things, and move forward after setbacks. Self-compassion helps us turn down the volume on shame's critical voice, reminding us that we're worthy of love and respect, even when we're not perfect. In a world that often celebrates perfection and idealism, the message that we must strive for flawlessness can be overwhelming. Social media bombards us with images of curated lives, and cultural narratives perpetuate the idea that success is synonymous with being perfect. Yet perfection is an unattainable standard that only serves to alienate us from our authentic selves. Embracing imperfection is a radical act of self-acceptance and liberation from the shackles of shame. At its core, embracing imperfection is about recognizing that being human inherently includes making mistakes, facing challenges, and experiencing setbacks. These aspects of life are not indicators of failure, rather, they are essential components of growth and learning. When we allow ourselves to be imperfect, we shift the focus from an unrealistic expectation of perfection to an appreciation of our journey as individuals. Perfectionism often leads us to fear failure, which can paralyze us from taking risks or pursuing our passions. We may find ourselves stuck in analysis paralysis, waiting for the right moment or the perfect plan to act. This fear can prevent us from exploring new opportunities, expressing ourselves authentically, or trying something we've always wanted to do. Embracing imperfection liberates us from this cycle of fear, encouraging us to step out of our comfort zones and engage with the world without the burden of needing everything to be just right. It's about taking imperfect action and learning from the experiences that follow. When we embrace imperfection, we cultivate resilience. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, and perfectionism can make us feel like we're constantly on edge, waiting for things to go wrong. However, when we accept that setbacks are a natural part of life, we become better equipped to handle challenges with grace and adaptability. Each imperfection becomes a lesson rather than a flaw, allowing us to grow stronger and more self-aware. Moreover, embracing imperfection fosters a sense of authenticity. When we shed the expectation of being perfect, we give ourselves permission to show up as our true selves. We can express our emotions, share our vulnerabilities, and reveal our genuine thoughts without the fear of judgment. This authenticity not only enriches our own lives, but also creates a more profound connection with others. When we present our authentic selves, we invite others to do the same, fostering deeper, more meaningful relationships built on trust and understanding. Shame often thrives in the presence of perfectionism. When we hold ourselves to an impossible standard, any deviation from that standard can trigger feelings of inadequacy or self-loathing. Embracing imperfection counteracts this shame by reframing our relationship with failure and mistakes. Instead of seeing them as reflections of our worth, we can view them as opportunities for growth and exploration. This shift in perspective enables us to cultivate a compassionate, understanding inner voice that encourages us to be kinder to ourselves. As we draw this discussion to a close, let's reflect on the journey we've explored together. Listening to shame is not merely about identifying the whispers of inadequacy that try to define us. It's about transforming that listening into a powerful catalyst for growth, connection, and self-acceptance. We've delved into the importance of understanding shame, breaking the silence that surrounds it, embracing vulnerability, cultivating self-compassion, embracing imperfection, and practicing empathy both for ourselves and for others.